And now we have to wait until my dog stops barking, because that's obviously also annoying.
Delivery.
My neighbor's walking her dog. And the two ladies, not my neighbor, but the dog of my neighbor and Frida. Not
Is
on
that
good
your
terms.
little dog? It looks like a little sweet dog. That's a big bark for a little dog.
65 pounds? Is that little?
He looks cute. That's a big bark for a cute dog. Put it that way.
You're listening to What's Your Baseline? The show where we unpack the real world of enterprise architecture, process management, and everything that helps you build a smarter organization. We talk tools, techniques, and tough lessons learned, so you don't have to learn it the hard way. My name is Roland Wold. Grab a coffee. Let's go into it.
Breanne, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I have a blast. The last 25 minutes, which we unfortunately didn't record, were very entertaining. And I hope we can bring some of that spirit into this episode, because today we're doing something differently. You get me on the podcast without adult supervision. So there's no co-host here. Nobody who reins me in asking the silly questions. Yeah, unsupervised, So
Scary.
yeah, you have to keep us on track. That's your side job that I didn't tell you when I invited you to this episode.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll try.
So, yeah, let's get started. What do we want to talk about, supervisor?
Do we want to talk about? I think we were here to talk about another podcast that I have online for Business Architecture Explained.
Ooh, that is interesting.
Maybe.
Yeah,
It would be an idea.
That's a good point. But maybe before we get to that point, and of course, you're all regular listeners and watchers out there, you will have recognized this beautiful voice, because we had Breanne already on the show, which seems to be ages ago, but I looked it up. It was in June 2024, so about 1.5 years ago, episode 71. But there might be one or two people who haven't listened to them. Shame on them. And you might want to give a mini introduction. Who's Breanne Casteel, and why are you here, and what's your bucket list? That the typical stuff to get to know you.
The typical stuff. I'm here because you made me come on your show without
There's worse
Jan.
reasons than that. Yes.
I know. No, we have a good time talking about architecture. So I think, back when we met I think it was BBC in 2024, my session there on standing up a business architecture practice, which was the first episode years ago, before I had gray hair, of course. I think you had hair back then? No?
On my chin, and
No?
it was
Okay.
gray already. Yes.
Gotcha. So, yeah, that's what I was trying to help people through standing up a business architecture practice, because I went through it myself. So instead of just book going, here's how you do it, A, B, and C, it was more along the lines of lessons learned, that there is no one size fits all. So that's kind of how I met you originally, and the first podcast that we recorded together. So thank you for that.
And I remember, my takeaway from that conversation is that you're one of those people who puts gasoline on a fire because you're not patient enough to light your campfire, and you put your implementation around the 4 different phases of doing campfires. That was very sympathetic to me. I like that.
I am really happy that was your one takeaway. It was nothing to do with standing up an architecture practice, but that I know how to start a campfire. That was the important part.
Yeah, that's something.
I agree with you.
Yeah, survival skills, Breanne, survival skills.
As long as I give one takeaway to people, just like today, hopefully there'll be at least one takeaway that somebody will get.
Can we already stop? Are we done now?
Right, how to light a campfire.
Yeah. Anyways, so after you lit the campfire, what has happened since then to you? Because I know you're not working for the organization that made you do campfires, and now you're working in I assume, a serious corporation, and you're doing.
Oh, they're all serious.
Worker bee stuff, or what is your current role?
Yeah, so I'm still business architecture. But it's under the umbrella of enterprise architecture. So if you go on LinkedIn, my title is enterprise architecture, but it's with the business architecture focus. So same what I was doing before, except now I'm not the sole business architect at the practice. Now I have a team. So it's really a different environment shift in that, since standing up the practice and being kind of alone, and the lessons learned and what you have to
Mhm.
do and advocate for yourself, and you have everything on your shoulders, to now, yes, we have a team and it's been established at the business for a while, but we still have to advocate for it. We still
Mhm.
have to explain, because different stakeholders don't know what is business architecture, right? Why do I need you helping my department? There's new people turnover all the time. You continually have to build your value. So
Mhm.
it's, even if you're at a mature practice, I think even the topics that we'll get in today, they're really helpful.
Well, that brings me to the point, pretending I'm one of your stakeholders, Breanne, what is business architecture? What are you doing here? Why do you annoy my daily work? What is the value add that you bring to my work?
I love that the one thing that I say about business architecture to people is it's a drama mitigator. And
Oh.
people just go, what? I'm like, because there's all of these elevator speeches that
Uh-huh.
I've used in the past, that other people use, and it depends on your context what my elevator speech would be to you. But me just speaking frankly with you, the part that I love the most out of business architecture that can provide to anyone across an organization is it's a drama mitigator. Meaning, if you have mapped out what your business does, how it does it, who does it, and when, right? All of the
Mhm.
building blocks of your organization, and you've mapped those together to know which levers are you pulling when, it's facts. Think of it as data for your organization. So if at
Yeah.
any point in time you come and say, oh, we need to go chase this shiny new thing, or we need to go over here and drop this business unit, or whatever may be the scenario, plug that into your business architecture. And instead of me versus you, it's here's the impacts it'll have on your business. No drama.
Yeah, but I heard alternative facts are a thing these days, So, no, but in all seriousness, yeah, I get it. I get it. I'm curious. Obviously, we will talk a little bit more about how you define it, on a little bit deeper level. What does a business architect do? But I'm really curious how you make the delineation between business architecture and the mere models who do business process management. How is it different? Where is it different? Or is it just different things on a spectrum?
I love that you asked this question, because I think this is probably the single most misunderstood piece of business architecture as it is today.
Mm-hmm.
In that, if you look at there's a history of business architecture, and I took a screenshot from the guild at one point in time, but I think back in 2011 and before, it was a lot around process. So that was involved in the business architecture realm, if you will. It no longer is.
Mm-hmm.
So when our main 4 artifacts or capabilities, org units, value streams, info concepts, right? There's 4, but then it expands out to 10, that how they impact. Process is not in there, meaning that I understand there's some business architects that are process analysts, like that is in their realm because their organization has them doing it. Like, so there's no one size fits all. I understand that. You have to do what your business has asked you to do. But in the true business architecture sense, you should have a process analyst. You should have a process miner, whatever you want to call them. And it has to roll and map to the business architecture, because that's part of the operating model. So what I like even doing is in our value streams capabilities, which we'll go into, I have to map the people process is one of them,
Mm-hmm.
information, data, technology, to our business architecture, the foundation. So we know how things are working in our organization. So.
Which is really interesting. And this is the shameless plug, because a few weeks ago, I started a Substack. For those of you who are interested, it's no surprises here. I'm a marketing genius. What's your baseline.substack.com. And I published an article about frameworks and reference content and notations, and I made the case and said, okay, hey, frameworks are structures, notations are languages. Um, reference content is content, So just to put this in there. And when I think about architects, and this is mostly what I see in IT, it's the developers who need a fancier title. They call themselves architects. But I think architecture, to come back to this, is structure, right? You
Yep.
try to build the framing, the walls, the bridges, whatever it is. It's not, if you think about an old Roman aqueduct, it's not the water that flows through that you look at the building, right? The aqueduct.
Right.
And I think that's a distinction worth making. And having said that, I'm still of that opinion that it's part of process management. But that's just me. Maybe I'm too
Yeah.
old school in that.
No, and to your point, it is a framework. I think all of these pieces need to exist in the business, right? It's not us versus them or anything of the sort. It's how have you laid out your architecture, your enterprise architecture, or all of your framework for your organization to pull the pieces when you need to. Do you have the business architects doing process? Well, okay, people can fight about it all day. Is it in the BizBox anymore? No. But should it map to it? Yes. Okay, but if you're doing process because that's your background and you moved into business architecture, why the heck not? It's like me moving from business analysis into business architecture. Should I still be doing business analysis? No,
sure.
but I still do some things.
When
I've taken
needed.
some of that
Yeah.
stuff. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think the most important part, maybe we'll go more into detail in a bit on this, is what I like to say is all of these pieces should exist in your organization. You should have dedicated people doing all of them. Like, you need to have people in process, otherwise you're going to have a problem. But then you should create an alignment of now, how do we work together? If it's business architecture doing process, fine. If it's not, know they're out there, know when I need to pull them in to get to an outcome.
Yeah, I agree. It's and you know it because you were thankfully one of the beta readers of my first book, where I had a little 2x2 graphic in there. On the one axis it was like, how general are you to how specific are you, and then the y-axis was the degree of contribution, right? And when you map it out, you do have, obviously, in the upper quadrants, you have the strategy person sitting at the table defining the what.
Yeah.
And then in the upper right-hand corner, you have that change agent, transformation agent, however you want to call it, the person who defines the how, right? And that's definitely different than, oh yeah, I draw my process diagram and I figure out which apps go where and which risks and all that stuff. So I'm with you. Yeah, you need that. And I think in the past have been too many projects where people, and I still see that today, where people just focus on a single process because, oh, we have to automate it, or, oh, we have to show our compliance, or whatever. We need to mix things up, right? But they forget the bigger picture in the background, right? The why. Why do we do this? How do we do this? And all those things. And then people struggle with showing the value. I'm with you on that.
Absolutely.
So, you said you have a new YouTube series about business architecture, and I know you did it with another gentleman there. But tell me more about this. What is it all about?
This is from the brainchild of Omar Gawad. He is the analyst architect, so you can look him up on YouTube or on our LinkedIn. We have links to
all the show notes
places
that will come with this episode.
Yeah,
yes.
Sure. We'll provide all that. But okay, so how did we even get to the conversation? He's a consultant, and so he's worked with a lot of different organizations and people, hearing the pain points. I, of course, as we already discussed, went through bringing up, how do you advocate for it? How do you stand up a practice? How do you mature a practice? So we have expertise in this. And the one thing that we both came to agree on is the practical usage of business architecture. And maybe, you've come across this in your process and other architecture realms, is there's so much out there right now that is textbook in nature, if you will, meaning you need to learn all these pieces of business architecture, the capabilities, the value streams, it lays it out what you need to learn. And it goes over some scenarios. But then when you have to put it into practice in the real world with an organization and you're thrown with 10 different scenarios on even one given day, how do I use business architecture to provide value to these people? How do I use it? What is the practical? Let's you and me talk about this in layman's terms, not textbook terms, of how can you help these people? And that's kind of what we were trying to bring out is what are the misconceptions? What are the lessons learned? How can we move this practice forward? Stuff like that in this just discussion like you and I are having right now.
Yeah, I just remember that while you were saying that, I remember the first time after I had my driver's license. And I took my mom's car and I was sitting in this with a key. I'm old. We had keys way back then. I was thinking like, there's actually nobody with me in this thing. And I'm allowed to drive it and operate it on public roads, without anyone looking. And that was like, A, scary. And B, I see a lot of that in process and architecture groups. They get the keys, the software, and then you do the fancy implementation. Or not so fancy in some cases. And then you go and say, yeah, and now what? And I think there's a need. Well, maybe I get you to write a book with a green bee in the corner about
Shameless
this.
plug.
We'll see. No, it will be your book. It will not be my book, But I can see the need. I can see the need to say, okay, how do you make that operational? What you've learned and what you bring in. So if we both agree on that, which I think we do, why this and why now?
I think what I'm learning and why I'm even helping people, because I have a day job, right? Everybody has, usually I'm not a consultant. I have a day job. I can just go put my head down and do my 8 to 5 and go on about my life. But a part of me, and why even in our last podcast we talked about, is I like helping people. I come from, previous generation was a line of teachers. And so I think it's in my blood is I don't know everything about business architecture. I've never claimed to. I have so much more to learn. But I learn from other people, and I hope that I can help somebody else, because some of the things that I share on this podcast and some of the conferences that we've both been to, right, is things that I've had a pain point on that I've had to unfortunately dig up. Or fortunately, I think you learn more by doing it yourself and going through the pain points too. But I was kind of hoping that, if somebody could help me along so I don't have to break down that brick wall, I have an easy way over it instead. Just use cases and people helping.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping to be here for somebody, even if it's one person, to help them in their trajectory. That's what I want to do. So I know you said why this and why now, why this, because I'm very passionate, as you know. Maybe I don't have the patience for it, but I'm very passionate for
Pour
business
some
architecture.
gasoline in the campfire.
Pour some
Yes,
gasoline on
please.
it. Come on, just
Go
keep
for
up.
it. Yeah.
But
Burn, Rome,
it's
burn.
always burn. Well, I don't want to burn the business down, but I would just like to see it be built a little bit faster, right?
Oh, here you go. Yeah, I'm with you. Interesting enough why you said it. Guess who has a master's degree in education? Just saying, and I had the very same thoughts. That's why the subtitles, and now it's a shameless plug, the subtitles of my book always start with a practical guide on how to, tie your shoelaces, right? Because
Right.
I think that's exactly what's missing. You see the people waxing and waning about big concepts, and then you poke a hole in there. Well, nowadays people talk about AI and whatnot, and I asked one of those guys like, I've seen 2.5 of those 6 points that you mentioned. Can you point me to the other one? And he says, we're in a concept stage, but it can. And I said, okay. Yes. So you see the high level stuff, but what I don't see is the hands-on, what do I have to think about when I do this? And also, and I, again, same opinion, if some people can learn from the mistakes that I made, That's great. If only one person buys the book, listens to this podcast or anything else that I'm happy.
It's only a mistake if you don't learn from it, right? So we've learned from it. Now let's help somebody else not make the same mistake. You brought up a good point too, that they told you so many points, but not another. One thing that I really like to share with people is, even in the work that I do with the other architects I work with too, as practitioners, is what I call the messy middle. Because I think, especially you being in process and all this other architecture stuff, we have these great end designs, deliverables to share a story, right? A perfect process map that shows how people flow through. Guess what? It probably went through a messy middle, right?
Oh,
Of
sure.
going,
Yeah.
oh, lines are crossing here and there's all these different people. And I like showing that too, going, we came from ambiguity. This is my middle diagram of how I had to kind of brainstorm and with other people in workshops, and we were throwing boxes here and here. And then it got to this end state. I like sharing that with people because I think sometimes, and I'm not saying, I don't want people that are on here that have done textbooks and in other books that, oh, well, no, mine isn't like that. I'm not saying all books are like this, but some that I've read is, here's an end state diagram of how you need to get to. And if you have this scenario, then you get to this, but you can never just get to that. It's so hard, right? So take me through your thought process. How did you get from this problem to this end state? So that's also what I like to bring people along on the journey, right or wrong, but to say there's a messy middle.
That is why when you see my LinkedIn posts, I'm trying to be as transparent as I can with all the shenanigans that myself and others have planned for What's Your Baseline this year, right? I start with build in the open, because I want people to see that it's not just whatever, a spark of genius, or, well, not me, or whatever. It's
You're
just
always
work.
a genius.
Yeah, thank you. I take it. Can I get that in writing?
It's recorded. You're fine.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, not seriously. So I think you want to show the process behind how the sausage is made to get to some not so nice topic. But I think people need to see that, as we like to say in Germany, those other people also just cook with water, right? It's just that little extra and how you do it that then you create a wonderful soup,
I like
that. On that. Yeah. So with that, since we already spoke over 20 minutes, let's do a little break, dear audience. I would ask you to think about, what were your experiences with business architects and how are they different to process people? And or do you have even those conversations in your organizations that you work in? And we come back in a few seconds and we talk more about the YouTube series and what's in the box and all those wonderful things. It's just changing. The wind will blow, but it's just changing. It's just changing. It's just changing. It's just changing. The wind will blow, but it's just changing. And welcome back. Breanne, obviously a very entertaining first almost half an hour that we spoke, which I really appreciate. But I would love to drill down a little bit deeper into the product that you created together with Omar. It's actually two questions that I have. So first of all, what's in the box? How many episodes? Are they all available? What are the topics and all those things? And then maybe a follow-up question, which obviously would be a follow-up question when I would ask that later, but I will forget. Is there a story arc in why you chose those topics and how they relate to each other? So what is it? Where is it? What's the content? Story arc.
You want all the information. Okay.
Yes,
What is it? Well, I'll start with this story, right? We wanted to cover points that had the most misconceptions, understandings, and try to bring that practical usage as we discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of all encompassing. So we have 9 episodes total. to your point, are they all released at the date of this recording? They are not, because we're releasing, I think, 2 a week. So 4 are released right now.
They might be out
Right.
with this. Yeah, it's in about 2
Yeah.
weeks from now. Yeah, maybe, almost.
So 9 total. Yep. So the first, of course, is introduction and kind of like what we did in the first part. But then we went into what is business architecture, very high level, went into foundations before models, which we can go into some of these. I'll give you high level. Foundation before models is, everybody talks about meta models and how things fit together. Like you and I talked about process, but we kind of just took out some misunderstandings of people are kind of scared of meta models, if you will, or foundations, but went into why you need them. And then capability maps, because capability is part of the business architecture main 4. But again, there's a lot of misconceptions, misunderstandings around it, especially in your space. Some people think a process is a capability. Like they'll come and say, I have a capability of X, right? But if they don't have the word of this is a process, then some people may think that, oh, we have this ability to statement, but it's an action. So anyway, we cover all of that in the capability one.
Yeah. So be my hard teacher here. In my mind, a capability is an assembly of different things. A process, people, skills, locations, applications, data, whatnot. Right. So different a configuration. Well, a thing, and then you can have different configurations, capability configurations. Think gold, silver, bronze, the thing, or think about different transition states. Tomorrow we can do this, and 2 days from then we can do that, and then another week after that we can do everything, right? And you use that for project planning.
Correct.
I get it, but there's also people who think capabilities are useless. And to those people I say, yeah, it's like a shoebox. You put a blue tape on it and you write on it project management. It's not the project management that you do. It's just the box where the project management goes, but you still need a box to describe what you're talking about. Is that?
Yeah,
So,
you need a stable shoebox, if you will, that you can map all your moving pieces to. Because if you don't have that stability, your shoeboxes, then what do you have to map to that makes sense of all of your processes? Where do they fit? What box do they fit into?
Foundations before models, capability maps.
Foundations
what
before
else?
models.
Yeah, what else?
Capabilities,
is in the box?
as we talked about. Value flowing through organizations, so value streams. And again, each of these we kind of touch on the most important pieces, takeaways, how do practitioners do it, how do businesses better understand it, the misconceptions. So we speak broadly on each of these. Business architecture and context. I love this one because this brings in what we touched on earlier about aligning these other domains. Because I'm such an advocate for business architecture doesn't do everything. Process modeling doesn't do everything. Solution architecture doesn't do everything, right? But we all need to coexist so that we can bring this higher level of value to the organization. That's why each of these pieces exist and we specialize in certain things. Anyway, so we talk about that and how business architecture fits in kind of the bigger piece. Line of sight, enabling strategy to execution, we talk about in an episode. Making business architecture stick is another episode about, it's one thing to stand it up. It's another thing to make it actually the stable knowledge base that your business needs, making sure that those are your business objects, for example, and then how do you sell the value instead of just going, hey, we have a map here, use it. It's like, no, you need to sell the value of it to put it into practice. And then we go into the future of, which we touch then on AI and how business architecture can utilize AI, but then also as a practice, use AI, but then also help businesses know when, find the opportunities to implement AI instead of, all these other businesses are utilizing this piece, this application for AI. We need to do it too. Now stop and think, does it work for your business, and how using the business architecture can help you answer those things.
Yeah, I think I need to be convinced about the usefulness of AI in general. But I see people having FOMO and just because the other guys do, I need to do it too. So yeah, but Well, let's see what the conversation in 5 years will be, but
It's here. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. It's happening.
Oh yeah. And OpenAI will go bankrupt in the next year or two. So anyways, but to come back, it's obviously, I think all those building blocks, those Lego blocks are great, but they're obviously greater if you can take the Lego blocks and build a bridge through it. So how did you get to choosing those topics and obviously, as I asked before, how to build the story arc around it? Is it just like, okay, we're given a curriculum and you need to learn about A, B, C, D, E, or is there some bracket, some story arc in your selection? What was the thinking behind that?
It's such a wide variety of topics that we wanted to cover. So the story did have to cover both from the practitioner point of view and, hey, because some of these people listening in are not even business architects yet, but they're interested in it. So we had to cover both. How do you even get into business architecture? What are the main pieces to start, to your point, create those stepping stones, but then also create the picture overall of the value. What the heck is business architecture? In practical language, terms, stories, what does it mean for you? Instead of just talking, its capabilities, value streams, info concepts, business units, and it connects to processes and all the policies and all the stuff. Okay, aside from that, what does it mean? So that's how these topics came to be and what we kind of wanted to have the outcome be of it.
So to ask the obvious question now, since you made everybody nervous, what is it? What is the value that you bring to the table by lining up those things? Why should organizations be interested in that at all, besides obviously watching you and Omar having nice conversations on YouTube and procrastinate a little bit?
It really discusses aside from what we talked about right when we kicked off this episode, right? It's a drama mitigator. It'll help executives be able to analyze their impacts of, if they make this decision, what does it mean for your business, short-term and long-term? Okay, that's what business architecture can bring, the value. But what the series value can bring is, what does it mean for me as a practitioner? Maybe what are some takeaways that I can take away to learn to do differently with my business? But then also the people that don't understand business architecture truly, and maybe have heard misconceptions or whatnot. I want to understand more, what does business architecture provide to me? And we have a little bit in every single episode, based on the topic that we cover, to kind of bring those questions and thoughts out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm just thinking out loud here because I've seen a lot of
You're going to have to listen
organizations.
in.
Oh, I did, my dear. I didn't listen to all of them, but I did. But the point is, I've been in a lot of organizations, and I got this stare, more often than I wanted to. Like, what do you do here? And it's like, oh, I do this. And then when money is tight, guess who's going to go first? Right. And I've seen that on projects. I've seen that on internal projects, and it's like, oh, God damn it. We didn't sell ourselves well, I guess, so that's the interesting point, I think. So I hope that your series will give people enough ammunition to avoid the stare, but to have a good answer and be useful. Right. Or be seen as useful. I've been to one client, and they just fired their EA group. And I was like, oh, and I looked at the material that they created. It was good. It was really good work that they did. They were not able to communicate the value. And then everybody thought, ooh, ivory tower, we don't have money for that. Bye-bye. Right. And that is obviously not great. Not great.
Yeah. And that is something that we touch on too. Yes, we talk about all of these different topics that we listed out, these 9 different topics. However, the thing that I try to get across is, business architecture is great. It's needed. I know the value it can provide. stop talking about it. Stop talking about enterprise architecture. Stop talking about the architecture. Or you said they had a lot of good deliverables. Great. But were they providing value with it? So, I mean, one of the topics that I bring up too is, main takeaway is stop and listen to your stakeholders, no matter who you're listening to, whether it be, I don't know what I'm going to get out of an outcome with somebody, out of a conversation. If I know they have a pain point, I have a meeting with them, I might go in thinking they need help identifying this solution, this best fit solution or something of the sort. I don't know. I'm just making something up. But when I go in there and I stop talking about, we can map to the capabilities and within the value stream, and like, that's all business architecture.
Yeah.
Shush.
The eyes roll
Listen
over.
to your
Yeah.
stakeholders. Right. And then what I could come out with, like one example that I have even, in my past is starting to listen to somebody and they were thinking, oh, we have a problem with our process. And to your point, yes, I was listening, but enough to know, yes, maybe I don't do process management, but I know this is a process pain point. But listening to them, it wasn't their process that had the pain point. It was they weren't getting from the other business unit that came before their process kicked in. They weren't getting what they needed from them, and they weren't providing downstream what they need. So the whole flow of value to the customer, their issue was bigger than that. So instead of going, oh, I can map this to this deliverable and this deliverable, I threw something on a whiteboard and said, okay, if we're able to get this into your area, your process, task list, whatever you want to call it, could that speed up your time to value to the end customer? Oh my gosh, you mean we could get that? Yeah, we just need to have a conversation with somebody. And then downstream, like you have these conversations, you listen to them without saying, oh, we need to go back and cross map this to this, this, and this. Just listen to your stakeholders.
Yeah, they don't care.
Right.
This is your gig. I don't know what black magic you're doing, but hey, I have a problem to solve. Nobody got time for this. Yeah, I hear you.
Yep.
I'd like to come back to a point that you mentioned in the first segment of our show, because you hinted on, you will talk about that, and I don't want you to forget. Info concepts models, and you said, oh, this is something that a lot of people don't do, but they're utterly important. So enlighten me. Talk a little bit about that and why it is important.
Yes, that is, and I will preface it saying this is even more important with the uptick of AI, right? Because people are on the bandwagon. I overuse the word customer. Everybody uses it, but nobody knows what each other is meaning. What do you mean by the word customer? But I mean, take any term. Is the person across the boardroom table from you, do they have the same definition of that term? Therefore, what you're getting out of reporting, is that what you need it to be? I've had instance of this when we're implementing solutions as well, that it is important. It's not just data. It's take objective, right? Is your objective the same as my objective? Not the word, the word.
Yeah.
How you define objective, is it the same? And then if we have a system that we're all putting our objectives into, if we're not speaking the same terminology and definitions, our reporting on the end of it is going to be bad. So yes, we need to have information concepts. We need to understand our terminology, our definitions. That is our sole core base. It does map to our data. So that's our alignment to data architecture as well. However, when I say it's even more important with AI, because we can't automate what we don't understand.
Oh,
meaning,
you do dumb stuff faster.
You just expect a better outcome because we're doing it faster.
Yeah.
We still don't understand it.
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
you have
no,
AI
if your
in it.
reporting isn't right now, because of whatever reason, even though it's slower. No, I'm going to put this into an AI system so we can get our reporting faster. Well, you're getting it faster, but it's still the wrong data.
Nobody cares. You used AI. It's all good. But I had the same thing. I was 7 years ago, I was working with a nonprofit in the project management space, and we had an extra team that should do, we called it data, right? But it doesn't matter. And they were, they had the same thing. After 3 months, they came out of their holes and they said, we had our first agreement. We defined what a customer means for this organization. Everybody was super excited. What is it? A customer is a person who wants to spend money for the products that we offer. And then, okay. And then somebody said, yeah, but I work in HR. My customers are the employees. And it's like, no, you didn't listen. It's not the same. Yours are the employees. It's not the customer, So yeah, I've been, this is when I do tool implementations, I start exactly with that. What do we talk about? Oh, we're talking about a process, an app, a risk, an organization, a position, a role, whatever, just to get it. And then how do we describe these things, right? What are the characteristics, the attributes of that thing? Yeah, I would have called it a little bit differently, but obviously we do the same, right? You need to have that clarification. But to quote you, don't make that so obvious. Right. It's not like what you said. Oh, yeah. Now I need to go and map it for 3 hours. Thank you, my dear workshop participant. You give me work. You just be silent and you just do it. And then you come back and say, oh, that's my glossary. And these are how those things are wired up. And we're using whatever the applications on level 95 and the risks on level 150 in my
they don't need to know
structure.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So having said that, speaking of other views, if you will, right, I would assume if you call yourself a business architect, you would have a very specific field of interest topic that you own versus other topics that are owned by others. Where do you see that delineation? We spoke briefly about business architecture versus process management, but I'm pretty sure there's others as well. How do you see that landscape?
So I go off of the meta models and the frameworks that are out there. So take whatever framework people want, but I'm under the impression that, especially when I'm talking about architectures, it's enterprise architecture umbrella with business architecture, app, data, tech, solution architecture. Like, they all have their own domains, if you will. Right. I mean, you could put process under there. The important part is that they communicate, they collaborate. Because so many times I hear that, and so many different people, not even organizations that I've worked for, but other people that I've talked to, it's like, oh, yeah, we don't get along with that group of people. We can't talk to our EAs. We can't talk to our process people. It's like, well, then how are you providing value to your business? Because yes, we live in our own scope, right? But if you look at any meta model, which I know, Roland, take it wherever you want with whatever pieces of the meta model you want to pull up, but they align to they connect. They have a line from capability, from information concept, whatever you want, to data, to process, to application service, to there's lines, there's connections for a reason, because they do connect for a business overall. They have to. So shouldn't the people that exist within those boxes communicate with each other? You would think.
Yeah, but
so it's just creating that collaboration model of sort too. Okay, I need to get these people involved.
Yeah, but they don't see that. For them, it's the silo.
No.
This is my department, you're in your department. We don't like each other. It's like football teams, or whatever. And they can't. I have not seen a lot of people who take a step back and look at that from an abstract point of view.
But who's paying your paycheck? Right? If people do take a step back and say,
not the other group, my boss pays
not the other group, but your business.
Oh, I'm with you.
So if we are all here to work in the meta model, they're all connected. If we are here to provide value to our business and we know that we can do it better together, isn't that also our job to do? because that business is paying your paycheck.
Well, the
It's
business,
hypothetical. I'm just saying.
the business is the widgets that we produce, and then we have customers who are people who are willing to pay money for our widgets, blah, blah. You could make that argument. But the
Yeah.
good news is we made so much money by selling our widgets that we now can afford AI. So talk to me a little bit about, because you mentioned it also earlier, this is obviously the hot topic in there. How do you support whatever stuff people think AI can or cannot do with your work that you're doing?
It's how business architecture going to use it.
But people are lazy. They think, oh, there's that AI thing. I don't have to think. I just press the easy button and then it does everything. But I get your point, right? It's two aspects. How do I use it in my day-to-day work as an architect? And how do I implement AI for my value creating things in that my business does, right? These are two different aspects.
Yeah. And I like what you said, because a lot of people, they do think, oh, I don't need to trudge through all of what we were talking about, the messy middle before, right? To get to it. They think they can plug in whatever their problem is and have AI just give it to them. Well, the problem with that we will still have architects employed is because we need to be the critical thinkers. We need to be the human in the loop. We have to be able to work with our stakeholders, right? AI can't do that. They don't have our policies, our regulations, our empathy, our all of this sort of stuff of what does the business really need out of this, right? So even if you plug it into AI and get a fast response, because I've done that sometimes as well, going, I have all this data, condense it for me, but then I read it and half of it's like, no, I can't show that to my stakeholder. That's not right, right? You still have to trudge through it and see what works.
So I hope I don't hurt your feelings. But because you've been around the block once or twice, if you would be the blue-eyed, I don't know, 25-year-old Breanne, fresh from college, never been in corporate America, and now that middle-aged dude says, Breanne, I need this tomorrow. Well, what would you do? Right? You would jump to your best friend Chad and ask him, what is it? And since you don't know better, you will present this. And then the middle-aged guy says, well, Breanne, that was not your greatest work, was it? And then you go, well, into the shower and cry,
Cry.
So I think that the challenge that I see here is we're losing the next generation, right? You and I can maybe able to go through this thing and say, yeah, it's not great, but I think the next generation doesn't have that advantage because they don't get to put into that position. They don't, to quote you, they have never done the messy middle, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. You need to be 22, have 2 degrees, speak 5 languages, spend 3 years in China, whatever, right? Just to get an entry-level job to stock shelves in your supermarket. You know what I mean? I
think something we can do with that, though, where we are at today, knowing, like if we have that feeling, like how do I set my practice, my practitioners, my role up for success into the future? Understanding AI is here, it's going to be used. I think what we can do now is set those principles, those guardrails of, if you do have an organization that's large enough to have internal chat, co-pilot, whatever it may be, AI, whatever platform, but it's behind your firewall so you can feed it your architecture, for example. But then train it on what is accurate for your business and then define those principles and guardrails, governance for your role into the future. Hopefully that will help. Maybe I have rose-colored glasses on, but I mean, at least it's worth something instead of saying, okay, we just need the human in the loop, intentionally look forward. So I think that's my main beef. I don't like the anthropomorphism, if that's a word, that people say. Yeah, it's a big word, yes. About, my digital coworker and whatnot. And I think I said it in the last episode. Whenever I see the next
picture of a human hand and a robot hand shaking, my eyes will wildly roll over and I go in the shower to cry, because I just can't see it anymore. But it's, I think that's a symptom of people who want to do it the easy way, right? So how do you, because in general, AI to me is automation. It's technology. It's just like your electric toothbrush, your Microsoft Word, it doesn't write it. Well, in this case, it does write it for you, but the content that's in there, it's just a guess. You know what I mean? It's not, how do you trust the result? And I think that is the big challenge. It helps you to do dumb stuff faster.
Well, it also helps you brainstorm too. Because if you think about an architect, you're like, oh, I'm given this scenario. Yes, it helps you do things faster. But then also what I challenge people to use it for as well is going, think outside the box. Because we've only been in certain scenarios in our life. Like you may come up, that's why you work with other people. They may come up with different thoughts or brainstorming that I may not, because, oh, I didn't even think about that. Maybe I should go research that a little bit. Like AI can give you ideas too to go search. But then are you going to trust it to then say, okay, now go make me a deliverable and show it to that on that? But I'm just bringing that forward to say that, it can do things for you quicker, but then also there is a good aspect of if you are the knowledgeable, messy middle, knowledgeable person in the middle, use it for that brainstorming person as well. Because maybe it'll come up with a good idea that you could take.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I've used it in for example, in demo scenarios, when I wanted to pitch process mining, I had to create event logs with some mediocre results in between, but still, if that's a process where I had no clue, you just ask, oh, what is the admission process in a university? Right. And it gave me something. What are typical KPIs? It gave me something. Or what are typical benchmarks? Right. It gave me something. So then combined with the event log, I pitched it to a university and the guys were like, oh yeah, I obviously validated the whole thing with people to say, is that really what's happening? So luckily my neighbors, one is a retired professor from Yale and other illustrious universities like the Gettysburg College. And the other one was the Dean of Admissions. So I had his wife, I had two resources who could validate what I put in there. I said, yeah. And I learned the term of the summer melt, which are all those candidates who applied, but then pick other colleges, that's a summer melt. Yeah, all those things. So that was fun. But yeah, it helped. But it's a helper. You know what I mean? It's not the solution. And yes. I think a lot of people think it's the solution. And I think those people will regret it. But what do I know?
I love what you brought up too, because something that I always try to tell people is never take a blank screen to a brainstorming session with your business, right? Like I won't bring a capability map as a something, but you always want to bring something. Because what I tell people is I love when people tell me I'm wrong. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but Roland, if I'm in a brainstorming session with you and I'm trying to get to the root cause of your pain point, of your issue, and I come with something and you say, no, it's not that, it's this. Great. I just sped up having you try to come up with what it's not.
Or people don't understand what you want. It's the same thing when you compare narratives, SOPs, right, in Word documents versus a process diagram.
Yeah.
The process diagram has some inherent logic in there. The XOR means this and only this and nothing else, while words are very flexible, and they're subject to interpretation. And yeah, I don't know. I like structures.
Did you use the word customer? Because I don't think I agree with you on what customer means. What
a customer is? Well, we can discuss this after this recording, ad nauseum.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
With a bowl of milk, I guess, that might be the thing. But having said that, I love our conversation, but we're creeping up to our time limit, Breanne. But before we get to the closing, obviously I want to hand it over to our audience again. Now that you listen what are the different building blocks, at least on a high level of the business architecture. How is that implemented in your organization? Do you have a formal group that does it, that spends 3 months discussing what a customer is, and how do you value this? Or do you go in the shower and cry when you hear that definition that a customer is somebody who pays for the widget? We leave you alone for a couple of seconds, and then we come back with the hard journalistic questions to Breanne in our last segment.
Love won't let you down, won't let you down. Yeah, hey, yeah, I need your love won't let you down. Hey, yeah, I need your love won't let you down, won't let you down.
And welcome back. Breanne, this was such a fun conversation. Not only while recording, but also between the recordings, the pauses that we had. So I would love to talk way more with you. So feel yourself invited for a third occurrence in this wonderful podcast, because it's fun. But I guess there's other people listening to our shenanigans here who now think, but I want to talk to her as well. So where can people find you, and what is your recommendation for them?
Well, as we discussed, my social security number is my maiden name, my address.
Good.
No.
Yeah, I will put all that stuff in the show notes,
All of that.
all of it. Public service announcement.
Details.
When you drive, don't take notes. Roland take care of all the URLs and numbers. It's all good.
Oh, goodness. No, but best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. Respond to messages if you want to reach out on messaging. Any of this information you want to know more on, feel free to reach out. I love communicating with others. I learn from others as much as hopefully they learn something from me. But I love reaching out to people and communicating on LinkedIn as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then I think I read you're speaking on some fancy conferences as well, besides your newly acclaimed YouTube
goodness.
fame, so do you have in the back of your mind where people can meet you in person?
Yes, if you're going to BBC Building Business Capability, the IABA conference, it's in Toronto this year, so venturing outside of the U.S. a little bit, but I'll be up there doing a 3-hour tutorial, so it's going to be more hands-on and learning, but it's about the gap between, closing the gap between business analysis and business architecture, so using two sides of the coin. So that's going to be really fun, doing that with Bola Adisop as well. And then going into another session for leveraging value streams to identify AI opportunities for your business, which we touched on a little bit here, but I go into exactly how. So 2 sessions at BBC this year. So that'll be fun. You can meet me there in person.
Yeah, and that is when?
That is in April. I think mid-April in Toronto.
Okay, I will see if I find the webpage and I put it in the show notes as well.
Yep, buildingbusinesscapability.com.
Yeah, this is where we met, back in Orlando, remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, you meet the nicest people at BBC,
I agree.
Liar. So having said that, obviously, you meet the nicest people in this podcast here, and I hope Breanne and I proved that over the last hour-ish, 45 minutes, 60 minutes-ish on this. And if you like what you heard, right, there's 2 things that I would ask you to do. One is tell your 5 best friends about this little podcast that could, right? So forget all the nonsense with liking and subscribing and all that stuff. But if you're very generous, and now comes the shameless pitch, we just started a Patreon. So patreon.com/what'syourbaseline, I guess is the URL. Just take a look, what we offer there. If you like what we do, if you like to support the little show, well, become one of our patrons. We would greatly appreciate this. And with that, I've been Roland Volt.
And I am Breanne Casteel.
And we will see you in the next one.